What's going on, fam? Today, I want to share just a very vulnerable, honest testimony. And this is about my personal experience with pornography. And some of you know that today I work as a full time porn addiction recovery coach, helping people overcome this thing and to process through their journey and to just find freedom. And I just want to be fully transparent with my journey and to allow others to know that it's not always pretty. It's not always clean cut. It comes with a lot of ups and downs, hills and valleys. And yeah, so I want to share just from a young age, there was constantly just this kind of expectation, I think, from the men around me that I had to lust after women. And I remember from a very young age, family members, pointing out certain women in public and saying, look at how, attractive they are, or look at their body or whatever it is. And it was normalized for me from a young age. And I think, at a young age, you don't really get it. And when I say a young age, I was probably, I don't know, between 5 and 7 years old, probably. And yeah, just, obviously at that age, you don't really have hormones, you don't really have testosterone and things like that as a young man, or as a young boy. It's not really as common to feel that, sexual arousal at that age. But I just remember those seeds were planted from a very young age. And then I remember, once I got to, I think probably middle school, or yeah, like fifth grade, sixth grade is when I began to really dive deeper into, let me even jump back. Third grade, actually. I remember I got in trouble because I had drawn a picture of a naked woman. Um, yeah, and that kind of just comes from growing up and being around family members or people that, see you as a kid and don't really mind, when they're changing or whatever it is. And, you're just a kid. So your presence isn't really as significant or counted as significant. So I just remember having those images in my mind. And then in third grade, I drew this picture and it literally, yeah, it just, I drew it I think it was like during our lunchtime or free period, and for some reason I forgot to like take it away or hide it or throw it out, and I just left it there on the table, and we went to lunch or we went to another class, and we came back, and my teacher basically was asking the whole class like, who drew this picture? And one of the people I was with ratted me out, and the teacher sat me down and basically asked me why I did this and said that if I did this again, I would be in trouble. So I never did it again. But I think that was one of my first memories where it was really just, it was just there. Like the images were in my mind, even though I didn't really think much of it. Like even the fact that I got in trouble for that was significant because I was like, oh, okay, like this is bad. And yeah, I remember even at a young age, just I remember just a family member had this like back massager thing, and I would literally use it to masturbate. And it's not like I really understood what that was. Like I just remember just like playing around with the machine, and one day it just landed on a spot and it felt good. And I wasn't even old enough to have an orgasm or anything. It was just like, yeah, this just feels good. So over time, that led into chronic masturbation. This is probably middle school at this point. I remember. I don't remember the exact day I was introduced to pornography, But I do have this vivid memory. I think it was in middle school that I went over a friend's house, and there were some other people there that weren't usually there as part of our friend group. And that person pulled out a video on their computer, and it was like two girls just like, I guess, I don't know, having sex or I don't know what, but it was just like they were covered in excrement. They were covered in poop. And it was just like a really gross thing, but it just like opened my mind to the fact that like, yo, there's a world out there with these kinds of thoughts and just something I couldn't even imagine. So, yeah, I believe it was in middle school that I really started to dive deep into pornography use, watching it, I mean, multiple times a day. And it just became a normal thing for me, right? I never really had a formal education from my parents, or, I mean, even in school, like, they don't really teach you much, right? I think there's just a program where they talk about your body parts and what that means as you're developing and stuff like that. But yeah, basically, no formal education. That was my onboarding experience, and it's the onboarding experience for many people. And yeah, basically, this thing turned into something that I did every single day. And it just became a part of my life. I didn't think much of it. In my mind, I enjoyed it. But looking back, I recognize that this contributed to a lot of the insecurity, a lot of the shame. Like, by the time I got to high school, like, I never had a girlfriend, like a real girlfriend, or any like real meaningful relationship with the opposite sex. And I would say it was mainly because I was so used to consuming this, and I didn't have to have a real relationship with someone from the opposite sex, right? I had that fulfillment. I had the orgasm and that counterfeit experience of intimacy. And yeah, I was always just this awkward, kind of quiet, more reserved person. And, again, dealing with a lot of insecurities, a lot of shame at a subconscious level, not even realizing that pornography played a huge role in this. So, yeah, and, this eventually led to me being afraid of actually having a sexual experience, because I had this idealized image in my mind of what a man was supposed to look like, in terms of like performance, in terms of size, in terms of all of these things. And mind you, I was a kid. I mean, I was like a freshman in high school. What is that? 14 years old. And all throughout high school, basically, I just had this crippling fear of like actually getting to the next level with a girl and not knowing what would happen, looking like a fool, looking like an amateur, right? Meanwhile, all around me, people are talking about like their experiences that they're having. Or I even heard this one girl that I was like entertaining conversation with. She said like her ex-boyfriend was terrible in bed, and just like a lot of these narratives that were very shame based. And because at that point I was still a virgin, at that point I had not, had any real experience other than like maybe like kissing a girl or something. Yeah, pornography crippled me as someone who, desired to have a relationship of some kind, but I settled for the screen. And at the same time, I was really into video games and playing Call of Duty and stuff like that. So really, like in a large extent, like I settled with the screen, not just in terms of a romantic relationship, but in terms of purpose, in terms of like real social relationships. Most of my friendships were online, through Xbox. So yeah, this eventually led into sexual experiences I had post high school. Yeah, and basically my own beliefs about myself and my inadequacy carried into, this sexual experience. And I basically had this self-fulfilling prophecy that I was not good in bed, that I was insecure, that I wasn't able to measure up. And that's exactly what happened. And I remember, I forgot exactly what the girl had said, but she was just shocked, I think, at like how quickly I finished, or she was so shocked at I forgot what it was. Just my lack of understanding of what was going on and how to have sex, basically. And yeah, it was a very shaming experience. It was a traumatic experience. And actually, that was the second experience I had. The first one I had was really awkward and really just me not knowing what to do and how to initiate the encounter. And it was just very weird. It was almost like done out of pity. And that left a mark on me. And then my second experience left a mark on me as well. And it just put me in a deep pit of insecurity revolving, the bedroom and, what it looked like to actually have sex and intimacy. And it became a thing that I was afraid of, not just because of the high expectations pornography set, but also because of the fact that I had real experiences that confirmed those narratives where the girl was just not impressed, or the girl was like shocked, or I don't know. So yeah, that was my kind of introduction to sexuality. So it started with pornography, and then it led into these sexual experiences that were very weird, very awkward, which is common for the first time, right? But I guess it's different when it's with somebody that has more experience, and then they're kind of just like, all right, this is weird. So all of that contributed to more shame, more just wanting to run away into pornography and into this artificial experience. And yeah, throughout the whole time, I was basically struggling with pornography. And then around the time of my second sexual experience, I had given my life to Jesus. And it's crazy because it was actually like the day I was baptized where this girl slid into my DMs and we were talking, and it led to like a month of just like sexual experiences that we were having. And yeah, it just felt wrong deep inside, even though like I never really received any formal discipleship or anything like that. Like nobody really sat down with me and taught me, but I knew it was wrong what I was doing. And it got to a point where I was working at a restaurant and my boss told me like, yo, stay away from this individual, because he knew the individual that I was talking to. So very interesting. But long story short, I ended up wanting to quit porn after I gave my life to Jesus, and I made an intentional effort, started praying every night. It would just be like this moment where it was just a war next to my bed right before going to sleep, because that's when I would do it. And I just remember trying to be still and trying to pray through it, and to not watch pornography. And some days I would get through it and other days I wouldn't. And actually there was a sermon series preached by Pastor Michael Todd. Some of you guys may know him from Transformation Church. And he preached the sermon series on expectation. And this is like a really old sermon series. But basically the essence or the point of the series was you need to expect what you're praying for. You need to expect that God is going to do the thing that you're expecting, that you're wanting, or that you're praying about. And like this message just increased my faith to such a degree that I had a healthy community. I was I was constantly working on myself and listening to sermons and in the Bible and in prayer. And I remember during this time actually is when I met my now wife. and she became my girlfriend at the time. And I just remember that I was still struggling with this thing. I was doing a little better, but I was still struggling with it. And it got to a point where I would be around her and I just would feel like this overwhelming feeling of just like lust and wanting to have sex, that it just like did not give me peace at all. And at this point, I wanted to do the relationship in a godly way. I wanted to follow God's principles and not have premarital sex and things like that. And I just remember, this was part of the reason why we broke up because I knew that I had to heal. And some of you guys may have already seen on my YouTube channel our testimony of how God brought us together. Highly recommend that video if you haven't seen it already. But yeah, basically we were dating and we broke up, and the Lord told me that she would be my wife in the future, but he really wanted me to heal and really grow. So at that point, I was looking for a therapist to really help me through my emotional wounds, to help me with, my pornography use. And I ended up getting a mental health coach, a Christian mental health coach, that helped me a lot dealing with underlying roots of rejection and, insecurities, right? That was the narrative that I had, that I was rejected. And as you guys have already heard, from some of my sexual experiences, that was a big part of the narrative that I had, that I wasn't good enough, that I was inadequate. And I had to process through a lot of that. Again, spiritual disciplines, healthy community. And yeah, time went on. And to kind of fast forward a little bit, I actually went about 3 years not watching pornography. And basically no desire for it. I had people around me while I was in seminary that were struggling, and I'd pray for them and guide them through it, help them through it, share the gospel with them so that they wouldn't feel condemned and shame themselves. And, praise God, like this was amazing that I was free from this, that I had done a lot of inner work. And I just remember after those 3 years, I ended up talking to or the Lord gave me permission to speak to my ex-girlfriend. And I believe that he was giving me permission because he was allowing me to rekindle that friendship and relationship. And it's crazy because it was around that same time that there was one night that I think like I had a cup of coffee or something. I had some caffeine like too late in the day. And I could not fall asleep. This is while I was at seminary. This is about, I forgot what year this was. This is 2022, I think. And literally, I just remember, I just remember being up, tossing and turning, not being able to sleep, just on my phone. And the thought coming into my mind of watching pornography again. Mind you, I had stopped watching this for 3 years. Not even desired it, not even a thought coming to my mind about it. And basically, I was just laying there and I just could not sleep. And I was just reminded that back in the day, this thing would, I guess, help me sleep. Not actually, but I guess just like the feeling of release. From orgasm. And in the moment, it's not like I was like tempted in the sense that my body was like pushing me to do it. Like for many people struggling with pornography, they have this overwhelming feeling that's pushing them to do this thing, or maybe pulling them, I should say. But it was more so just like the thought that was in my mind to watch pornography. And it was really just boredom. And I remember in that moment I was praying. I was like, God, like, this is on my heart. Like, I kind of want to do this. And I vividly remember, like, I believe I heard the Lord speaking. And I remember hearing the Lord speaking that if you do this, this will impact your marriage. And in my mind, I'm like, this is heavy. Like, this is kind of a big thing. And after just like debating for like 30 minutes, again, not even feeling like I had to do it, but just like entertaining the thought. And eventually I fell back in. And I fell back in. I indulged. And afterwards, I couldn't believe it. This thing that I had prayed so hard about, this thing that I had gone through mental health coaching for, this thing that I had spent, a lot of money to process my healing or my wounds and my traumas. And literally, I just threw it all away. And just like the proverb says, it's like a dog returns back to its own vomit. So a fool returns back to his foolishness. And that led to like a period where I just continued falling back into it. And I was so sad. I was so angry about this because I knew that it was just that moment of boredom that I just decided, you know what, let me just do this, even though I knew that I didn't have to do it, right? Again, I wasn't like pulled by this overwhelming force to do it, but it was literally just a moment of idleness and I just couldn't sleep. And I mean, I just want to pause here and just say, like, man, sleep is so important. And if for some reason you can't sleep, like, I think about David from the Bible and how he was wandering on his roof at a time when he was supposed to be out fighting in a war. And instead he goes on his roof and he looks down and of the palace and he sees this naked woman bathing, and it opens up a door for an entire experience where he takes someone's wife and rapes her and ends up killing the husband, and the woman gets pregnant and the child dies, and just a whole mess. So I just want to pause here for a second and just say it's not worth it. It's really not. In my experience of just wrestling and fighting with this thing, it was like for months that I was really going back and forth with this thing through, just starting to talk again with, I guess, my ex-girlfriend who became my girlfriend again, through the engagement, even through, the early stages of our marriage. And, I thank God that right now, like, I'm free, and to be honest, this whole journey of wanting to help other people through this was birthed out of this relapse that I had after 3 years of being free, because it made me realize, like, you need to stay on guard. Like, there's no, just because you're free for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years or even 20 years, it doesn't mean that your free will is taken away from you. It doesn't mean that you can't pull that thing up again. And there has to be constant reminders, constant, just systems in place for you to not go back to that, right? And those systems involve accountability, like frequent accountability with people that are already free. This requires vulnerability. One of the things that helped me a lot was just sharing all of my social media passwords and all of my accounts and literally everything I have with my wife. And it's just allowed me to live in the light. There's like, I don't want to live a life that is hiding in darkness, that is hiding details. I want to live a life that can be seen for all to see. And that was actually inspired by Tim Ross. Some of you guys may know him. He has a podcast, and he's just extremely vulnerable, just radically vulnerable. And that's actually one of the pillars that I have in my program that I help people overcome with. And yeah, it's just to be radically vulnerable is so key. And I remember, in part of my journey of gaining back that self-control, I had a therapist that I was meeting with, and I just remember, when I opened up about my struggles, the therapist literally said, like, what type of porn do you watch? And in my mind, I'm like, man, are we about to get that vulnerable? Like, I've never been asked that. I've never shared with anybody, and what type of stuff I watched. And it just revealed to me that there was so much hidden. There was so much in darkness that I hadn't brought to the light. And, there's a book called Unwanted: How Sexual Brokenness Reveals Our Way to Healing by Jay Stringer. And this book is powerful because it goes into those narratives that are found in the type of content that you watch. And the type of content you watch actually reveals where are the wounds, the emotional wounds that you have on your heart, on your mind. What are those narratives that you keep trying to play out in your life, or that you keep running back to for comfort? And these cycles that you're stuck in. And yeah, highly recommend that book. I use that book as a major tool in the process when I coach people through this. And yeah, it's just incredible to think that this is a deep rooted issue. This is not a small thing. This is something that, when you think about drug addiction, like, there's fewer people struggling with drug addiction in comparison to people struggling with pornography addiction. And, there's different studies that you could look up that would demonstrate that. But I think the reason that is because we are inherently sexual beings. God created us with sexuality and a desire for sex, which is a good thing. But because of just like selfishness, because of the enemy distorting our desires and making us desire things to serve us, even at the expense of other people, this really has shifted the view of what sexuality is in society as a whole, in this world. And I think for that reason, many people are trying to suppress or cut off their sexuality when you can't, because it's literally built into your biology. It's built into your psychology. Like, you are a sexual being, and to try to not be a sexual being is trying to do something or uproot an issue that's not even an issue. It's more so the distortion of those desires that are bent towards self that makes it an issue, right? That's where you get rape. That's where you get sex trafficking. That's where you get abuse. That's where you get all of those terrible things, because people just want what they want, even if it hurts other people, they don't care. So sexuality is something that's built into us. It's a good thing. It's meant for intimacy. It's meant for a committed relationship in the context of divine covenant with God's blessing on it, right? Because there's commitment there. God is involved. It's till death do us part, right? But once you take that powerful force that involves oxytocin and dopamine and testosterone and estrogen and the potential of having a child, all of those things are supposed to be in the context of a divinely committed relationship in a divine covenant blessed by God, because that is where those things are safe. That is where those things can be consistent and loving. But once it's outside of that, that is where selfishness and self-indulgence and a lack of regard for the other person or other people comes in. So this is why it's so important. I did want to share a little bit about my story. I'll probably share a little bit more in another video. But another component is just the hurt that it contributes or that it causes to your partner. I know for me, especially when, me and my now wife, when we were engaged early on in our marriage, like, it was a really heavy thing, because especially, with women, there's a lot of comparison that already takes place within society. And when you know that your man or that your partner is, lusting or sexually desiring another woman on another screen that probably has, a more ideal body, or, a different whatever, like body type or physique or whatever. There's a lot of insecurity that comes in, right? Betrayal trauma is a very real thing. And these are just things that cause hurt and grow distrust in a relationship, especially with the partner that is experiencing betrayal trauma. So this is something that has to be dealt with. And I'm not saying that anybody's perfect. I'm not perfect by any means. And I just know that this has to be dealt with wherever you are in your journey, whether you're single or you're engaged or you're married or you're divorced or separated. Like, wherever you are in your journey, this has to be dealt with, because this issue literally bleeds into every other area of life. It literally, messes with your finances. I have clients currently that have spent thousands of dollars each month, on OnlyFans or on tipping models online or whatever it may be. This impacts your marriage, your trust, your intimacy, right? Your sex life is impacted. Sometimes you're going to look at your spouse as just an object or a piece of meat for you to masturbate with or to get your own pleasure for, right? This thing can impact, you name it, your motivation, your drive for a career, for purpose, for impact in this world. Like, all of these things impact, self-esteem. Like, the list goes on. But this has to be dealt with. And the truth is, in my case, and maybe it's not for you, maybe it's not for other people that you may know, but I know for me and for many other people, it's not until I invested into myself. It's not until I hired a coach to help me process my traumas, a coach to hold me accountable, a coach to guide me and to have me be part of a community. It wasn't until I invested in myself. And when I say that, I literally mean, like, I'm investing finances, I'm investing money, I'm investing time and energy and resources into me through a coach that was helping me, right? Many people think, oh man, no, I'll figure it out on my own. I don't need any help. I'm not going to hire any professional help. I'll figure this out. I'll pray through it. And there are studies that have been done. Even on my Instagram, I posted a chart that demonstrates that less than 10% of people who try to use their willpower and try to do this alone actually find freedom, in comparison to people that are part of structured coaching programs that help them, that actually the success rate is 70 to 90% if they are actively putting in the work, if they are actively following the instruction of the coach, and following everything on time without delay. So all I'm trying to say is that for me, in my story, I needed help. I needed community. I needed a mentor. I needed a professional. I needed to heal through my emotional wounds. And I needed God. And, to anyone out there who's thinking that you can do this on your own, that just watching another YouTube video or another podcast is going to help, it's not enough. It's not enough. The relapse streaks, the counting days, it's not enough. You need to be surrounded with a safe community that is consistently safe. You need daily accountability, if not daily, at least every other day or multiple times per week. You need to have emotional healing, somebody that you're processing through your emotional wounds, your traumas, your triggers that you have, because we all have them. Even if you think that you've had a perfect upbringing, living in a fallen world means that you have traumas. You have emotional wounds that you're not aware of. Especially if you think that you don't have any, you definitely have some, because you're not aware. You're not self-aware. And this is coming from someone that has a background in psychology as well. Like, everybody has issues, whether you realize it or not. And the issue is when you don't realize you have an issue. So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit about my journey. I personally just thank God for allowing me the ability and the community and the mentorship and the coaching I needed to be set free, but also the privilege to journey with people through this. So just wanted to share that. In the description below, I'm going to share a couple of links. One of them is to a live masterclass that I host. It's in the description. And I also offer a one-on-one strategy session where I will come up with a personalized plan for you to be set free. So all the links will be in the description. But ultimately, all I want is for you to find help, even if it's not with me. If you find it with another coach or another program, get the help that you need, because you don't have to go another day struggling with this thing. Trust me, life without porn is so much better. Your mental state is clear, your motivation, most of all your conscience is clear, and you just know that you're living out at the best capacity that you could possibly live life through. So that's all I wanted to share today. More videos to come, but thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk soon. Peace out.